running late.
I just hit live. So we're just going to have to wing this. This is part of the process, so that's okay. We are here with Connections with Tavia
You just
Avila.
got really quiet, Tom, so we can't hear you, actually. You might want to turn up your volume.
Okay. Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
Oh, you're really low. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my microphone is exactly in the same place it always is. I don't want to kiss it
I think
because I'm afraid it might kiss me back.
Yeah, it got pretty low there.
And Jeremy enters.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, so let's restart this. We are here on Sunday, December 11th, 2022, on Connections with Tavia and The McClish, or better known as The Goon. I'm Tom here with Tavia Avila. And today we wanted to talk about a few things that kind of followed up from last week a little bit, because we are still running up to the holidays, whether that's Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or Christmas. For a lot of people, this just is a very stressful time of year. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about impacting the repetitive cycle of stress, anxiety, and depression that so many people deal with right now. And I know Tavia, whenever she's ready to begin talking, will be able to talk a little bit about her own stress that's been going on in the last few days, which I think most of you will be able to connect with. Pardon the pun, connect, but we'll be able to connect with in terms of sickness and illness that's going around right now. And if it's not COVID, it's the flu, it's sinus infections, it's all these things. But so we'll be talking about that. So impacting the repetitive cycle of stress. And then a couple other things that we wanted to talk about. One thing is to share a breathing technique. We talked a little bit about that last week, but we want to share breathing techniques, a technique that's been used for years and years, decades actually, by the military. Actually, it's used by the military, believe it or not, to help the armed services sleep during wartime, right? Because if you think about it, if you're in the middle of a gun battle, I mean, it would be really difficult to sleep. And if it's protracted, there have to be techniques that you can use to sleep under highly stressful situations. So we'll talk a little bit about some breathing or particular breathing technique used by the Navy SEALs and other armed forces. And I threw in something interesting that I thought I'd throw out there because this always gets people talking a little bit, but why couples view their relationship so very definitely. And I don't care, or differently, I should say. I don't care what kind of couple you are. This isn't about, straight or non-straight or whatever, but this is just about couples, right? About people that tend to see their relationships after a certain amount of time in very different ways. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And I might analogize men to dogs and throw myself in the fire. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if I'm brave enough to do that, since I am in the hub of the universe. And then finally, we're going to talk about why we continue to live and work in the Matrix. And for probably 98% of the world that saw the movie The Matrix, hopefully you'll have some idea of what I'm talking about contextually, but we'll talk a little bit about that and how it happens, why we're in the Matrix. Are we in the Matrix? Was it all just fabricated? Are we just all a bunch of sheep, or what are we doing? Why is there a podcast called Connections with Tavia and the McClish, right? Why is all this going on? So anyway, Tavia, how's your hookup there, your technology? Is it working?
We're all set.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So since we were talking about stress last week, because we are right now 2 weeks in a day, as I can best count, up to Christmas, for one thing, I know that a lot of people are really getting stressed to the max. And one thing that seems to be exacerbating all of that is certainly just a terrible situation with the flu and sinus infections. And I know you were a little stressed out this morning. What was going on?
So Taylor, my son, who's 8, is very sick right now. And he's been to the doctors twice now in the last couple of days, trouble breathing treatments. And he's prone to respiratory problems. So I'm sure the parents out there that that you can relate when your child is very sick, you're having trouble breathing, everything stops. You just want to do all that you can to tend to your child and their well-being. So yes, it's been very stressful, and just navigating, trying to be ever so present, and still trying to take everything slowly because he doesn't want to rush. He doesn't want to move fast, but I feel like I'm trying to move at lightning speed right now. So yeah,
So this is a great time to talk about a breathing technique.
fantastic. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's not
Good.
talk about it. Can we do it?
We can.
I don't like just talking about things. I think a lot of my listeners from the previous show know that.
Great. I mean, let's get into it because I think if anybody could use it right now, it would be you and your son, right? So, but I suspect he's a lot calmer than you are right now. So because moms usually get a little bit more stressed out, so we're good. So with this box breathing technique, as I said earlier, the military had to figure out a way to help people sort of de-stress in the middle of the most stressful circumstances on the face of the earth. And so they came up with a breathing technique that helps to calm the autonomic nervous system down. And, one of the things that I see a lot, and I think you see a lot too, Tavia, are people that talk about how they thrive under stress, right? They're like, I have to have stress to be creative. I have to procrastinate, which leads me to stress and being under the gun for a deadline, because that's when I'm my best, most able to think. And so I see these cycles repeated over and over where people think that they somehow believe that they're thriving by living in this completely stressed out, bonkers world where they're running a million miles an hour. And, they're, we all know a lot of people who take pills to help wake up in the morning. They take pills to go to sleep at night, or they drink to go to sleep at night. And they're doing all of these extraneous things to help address something that they have a misconception about what's happening. And the misconception is that, what they're living in actually is a survival mode. It has nothing to do with a thriving mode. And so when we talk about survival, we're talking about, again, this autonomic nervous system. And, years ago, when there were things like tigers and lions that might be a threat to us when we would leave our homes, and in some places in the world, lions and tigers are still a threat. So, it's not bad to have this, but we would sort of go into this fight or flight mode where we would have our hormones would go crazy, right? Like our whole body would shift into this, which would help us to assuage the situation, with whatever danger was lurking in front of us. And so we would have cortisol, we would have adrenaline surging into our bodies, which would be awesome at the time for the immediate threat. The problem is that we sort of develop this repetitive action, this habit of living in that mode. So when you go to the food store and you can't find a parking space, you start going into the mode where it looks like there's a tiger there by the shopping carts, right? And so you get angry. I mean, this is where this road rage comes from. I mean, it's crazy to watch this, but it's true. I mean, you drive on the road and you see signs talking about dealing with road rage. I mean, but why is that? Because people are living the absolute opposite of what makes sense chemically, rationally, thinking about our autonomic nervous system for what it actually is, and the way that we survive is not the way to thrive. So living in that mode, but that mode has become just very commonplace. And most of us at some point or another have lived that way for years. The problem is that when you're living in survival mode and you're constantly surging things like cortisol and adrenaline and all these chemicals into your body, it also creates what's called adrenal failure, right? And so this is where a lot of people, as they get older, start to have a lot more issues because they're literally breaking down. I mean, they've been living in this mode that works for an immediate danger, a real immediate danger, because it allows us to fight or to run or to play dead, right? Freeze. But it's really not meant to help us get better and to feel better. And so, and I'm not saying that you're in fight or flight or any of this, but again, when you're stressing, I mean, I know you had to run to urgent care later in the day.
Mhm.
Now I wasn't there because I'm 2,188 miles away, but I can visualize lots of other people, not just lots of other people, but sick people. And all these thoughts are going through your head, like my son is really sick and we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to get the meds, I have to get him home, I have this podcast. Like that's a lot of stress, right? That's a couple
Yes.
tigers.
Yes. I will say this though. I'm more stressed this morning trying to get here and trying to juggle him and trying to switch gears to come here. Like everything kind of slowed down yesterday for me. It was like I'm just focusing on Taylor. I'm just focusing on his well-being. And I set an intention before I even went to the doctor's office. Like it's just going to go smooth and we're going to be seen and we're going to get checked out. And I set the whole intention and I just became ever so present. And I know that he wasn't wanting to rush. He can't rush. He's just really not feeling well. So he's just, everything is just very slow. And even though they were able to see us right away, we were still there for 3 hours, getting all the things done.
Right.
But I'm more stressed this morning. I would say I'm stressed this morning trying to leave the house, come here, switch gears out of just tending to him. So
Sure.
there's
Sure.
that. There's that. I also want to mention this. When people say, "Oh, I thrive under stress. I do better under stressful conditions." I'm just like immediately reflecting back to when I was a news reporter, and here I am giving live news reports and very high stress job. Very high stress
Absolutely.
job. You got to stay on it.
You do.
What's going on? And there were times where, the information would come in, press release, get the update on traffic and what have you, and everything just flowed. Like, was it high stress? Yeah, I have like less than 15 minutes to write this up, get it on for the next live broadcast that's going to like affect all these people that are driving right now. So, there's urgency and all of that. But I will say that even sometimes when we're under high stress situations, there's this, we can still be in the flow. That's what I've felt like. We can still be in the flow. So I don't want to discount that. I get what you're saying, Tom. I hear what you're saying. And I still feel that sometimes when we're ever so present, things feel like they slow down and we're just in the flow. And one thing leads to another and everything is just moving and seeming to work out quite beautifully and coming together. And so there's been times like that. I mean, there's plenty of times where it's like, oh, this is uncomfortable and that just went to crap at some point. Everything just blew up, But I just wanted to give that piece as well. I hear what you're saying, though.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, and again, I mean, we have this fight or flight nervous system capability because it's very needed and it protects us from lots of things. I mean, if you're crossing a street and you see a car speeding towards you, that helps you to get back on the sidewalk really, really fast. So that's a good thing. But one of the things that at this time of year too that is really interesting is, and we're going to talk about it more when we talk about this matrix issue, but I mean, when you think about what we're exposed to on a not almost, but a constant basis, if you want to, is the news. And, you've got 24/7 news cycles. You were talking about news before. And I mean, that's certainly important. And of course, we need to know what's going on in the world and it makes us more informed. However, when you're already stressed and you're already sort of in a place that's leading to or already at overwhelm, man, I mean, if you are flooding yourself with, and the way that happens is unintentionally a lot of times. I mean, you go home, you put on, CNN, the BBC, Sky News, Fox, whatever. And it's, even if you have it on mute, right, there's these banners like underneath that are constantly running through talking about all these terrible things.
I'm going to interject.
Sure.
I, when people are like, oh, well, it's on mute, I don't give an F. Like, it's that energy is still there. You can still see it. Like you said, there's that bold red going across the screen. Everything is like screaming at you, alert, pay attention, or like this high intensity. Turn it off. Give yourself a
Well,
break.
and so I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and the response is typically, well, I mean, I feel like I can't turn it off because I need to know what's going on. And so
Right.
here's what I want to ask people to think about. What has the news actually done for you in terms of like, I understand, for example, the war in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, and that's certainly important. The thing is, like, how does that actually impact you? Now, if you have family there, I understand it does. The thing is, if you have family there, I suspect you're getting a lot more information directly from your family as opposed to the news, because no matter what news
Mhm,
organization that you look at, for the most part, there's
mhm,
going to be some kind of, leaning one way or the other. Okay, whatever. I mean, and that's fine. But what I'm saying is, what is the news really doing? So even, for example, I mean, weather issues. I mean, you can go online and look at the weather in a minute, right? You can go to a local station, see what the weather is if that's bothering you. If there was something like a tornado or hurricane, or you're in some jeopardy of something, I mean, our phones all go off now, right? Because we have sophisticated systems to alert us. So, I mean, the reality is that news really, if you really stop to think about it, what impact has that had on you in a meaningful way in a long, long time? Just simply to say that if you did what you just said, Tavia, that you said, look, we're on December 11th. Just as an experiment between now and the end of December, I'm going to slow down just a little bit. I'm going to shut the news off because it really isn't going to impact me. It's not going to make a change in my life, my family's life, truly, between now and December 31st. It's just not. I mean, and if I want to see the weather, if I absolutely need to know what's happening in Ukraine, I can check that, but I don't have to have it spoon fed to me 24/7, even in the background, or seeing the banners, the red banners, right? All these things are done. It's like hypnotic inductions, right? Because we see red, we see
yeah,
important. So we have to look, we have to read, and these things impact us tremendously. So, along with some of the other tools, I mean, just think about that. Even on the radio, stop listening. You don't
yeah,
have to do that.
yeah.
You really don't.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm seeing this coming from a news reporter, previous news reporter. I remember so many people saying, "Oh, when you get really stressed out, just turn off the news, turn it off." I'm like, "What do you do if you're the news reporter?" Well, in that case, you up your self-care, like a lot. Whatever you were doing, you like 5 times that much. Like, that's what I did. I upped my self-care. I really, that was like the forefront of my mind, just like, what are you doing right now in this moment to take care of yourself? And it worked. It helped counterbalance, but I was still immersed in the news. And I had to be, even when I was technically off, I still was completely in the loop with everything that was going on, and could write up a news report like that, no problem. But I have had so many people around me, again, following Ukraine, immersed in it. And I'm like, and I've asked them the very question that you just said: how is this serving you right now? How is this serving you? And their response, it's not. And yeah, it's clearly, not. Like, you're very stressed out. It's doing this and this. I give specific examples. I'm like, you just turn it off. It's not helping anything by you tuning in. So I'm right there with you, Tom. I'm right there with
Well,
you.
right. And even, I think about things like Amber Alerts, right? So there's a
Yeah.
child kidnapping, something like that. Now, the thing is, something like that, you're not going to see on the news. And if it happens at 9 a.m., and you watch the news at 6, it's probably not going to impact you or the child.
Mhm.
Now, that's why we have Amber Alerts, right? I was in Texas not very long ago for a couple days, and we were getting Amber Alerts, and I don't know why in Texas this seems to be such a problem, but we were getting Amber Alerts. I mean, seemed like about every 30 to 45 minutes. I mean,
My
it's
gosh.
very weird. Yeah. And so we actually had to turn off the alerts because they were so prevalent, but that's true anywhere. And so I know you get them in Santa Cruz. I mean, we
Yeah.
get them here. That's part, as I said, the weather system. I mean, if there's something really significant, you're going to find out about it sooner than you will if you're watching the news. And just think, what in the last 30 days, in the last year, what has the news actually done for me in a meaningful way? And it's not to cut on the news, but I just think when you think about people that are living in these really stressful situations, it can make a difference to take a break, right? We're not saying to never watch the news. I mean, if you're that hooked on it, great. But just think about easing up on it. It's like anything in moderation is probably a little better than too much of anything, right? Even a good thing.
Yeah.
So if we talk about breathing, and as we let in with the fact that the military uses this, the great thing about this particular technique is it's super easy. So even for a goon, this is something that you can readily remember because it only uses one really easy number, and that's 4, right? So everything about this is 4.
Great.
And so let's get started with it, right? So
Okay.
what we're going to do, and one thing that people do lose sight of is the fact that breathing is part of the autonomic nervous system. So we don't think about it. And so people are like, I don't get this. Why do I have to? We don't breathe the way we really should be breathing for maximum clarity, oxygen absorption, and all that, which is when we breathe, we should be breathing through our nose, right? And when we do that, the way we know if we're really doing it properly is that our tummy expands, our abdomen expands. So, and that's something that you should be aware of when you're doing this. It'll be very helpful and make a bigger impact more quickly. So the first thing we're going to do with this 4-4-4 technique is to exhale any remaining air that's in the lungs, right? Before we actually start this. Let's get rid of all that junk, old, stagnant air. Just exhale that out.
And sometimes this is helpful. Like if people haven't done breath exercises in a while, you could put your hand on your tummy to feel the expansion. That's what I started doing when I started getting into breath work, and so I could get into the flow. So,
right. So we're going to exhale out all the junk, sort of stagnant air, right? So we'll do that first. And then after we do that, we're going to inhale for a slow 4-second count. So why don't you put up your finger, Tavia, after you get all that junk air out, that stagnant air. All right. So now we're going to inhale through the nose into the abdomen for 4 seconds, real slow. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to hold that air in there for 4 seconds. Again, slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then slowly breathe out for another count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just get all that out. And now that seems just kind of silly, right? I mean, it seems like, how could that possibly work? Well, as I said, it's worked for many, many years. I actually, when I first heard about this, I thought this can't really be a military thing. And of course, it was a military thing. And I think sometimes that's the thing that a lot of people, when they're in that stress mode, is they become in a situation like paralysis by analysis. And it's like, sometimes it's the most simple things that work the best and the quickest. And so ideally, now this, if you haven't really done any kind of breath work like this, you may feel a little dizzy. That's totally normal. By the way, the Mayo Clinic has actually come on board with this breathing technique and has indicated the significance of what it does in terms of, seriously impacting stress and anxiety. So ultimately, again, this is about 4s. That's the only number that you have to think about. So if you know that number and you can keep it in your head. So now all we have to do is repeat that 4 cycles.
I have to say, mine that I was going to share next week is very similar to this, but you hold again at the end for 4. The breath. Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go with this one though. And then we can do mine next week.
We'll do it next week. So let's exhale out the whatever stagnant air there is. And then we're going to inhale for the count of 4 into the abdomen. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Going to hold that for 4 slow seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then a nice slow exhale for 4 seconds. That's all it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. And one thing too that helps, and I know this sounds weird, but anytime you're doing breathing exercises, if you let your tongue, because this is another thing people really find odd, but our tongue sometimes gets really like paralyzed as well as we do by overwhelm and stress. And so let your tongue just feel it sort of like fall into the bottom of your mouth, because that's a true sign that you're in a more relaxed, calm place. So, and if you want, we can inhale again, because I know you've already exhaled your junk air. So we'll inhale slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then a nice slow exhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's been a total of 3 times. But I don't know. How do you feel, Tavia? Do you feel any
I
calmer?
was just gonna say, I like in that third one, I just got really peaceful. I
Yeah, it
just I
really,
felt a lot of peace.
right.
All of this is a lot more calm, which is very nice. Very nice switch from this morning. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's always struck me is that people really, and this is true, I mean, we all think it's like it's programmed into us early on that things to work for whatever reason have to be kind of complicated, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times when we talk about things like breathing exercises, meditation, all this, that's woo woo, right? That's only done by people wearing tie-dye shirts and wearing Birkenstock sandals. And I mean, you know, I'm not going to say that you won't see people that wear tie-dye shirts and have Birkenstock sandals doing those things, but that doesn't mean that those are the only people. It doesn't mean that it's mutually exclusive to the remainder of the world. The thing that people have found about these types of things, just a simple breathing technique like that, or even meditation, which we're going to have a whole program on, but that those things can actually change the trajectory of your life in terms of really
Yeah.
not only being more aware, right? But and in the present and in the flow, like you were talking about, but like actually being so much more productive in less time. That's the thing. Like you talk to people today, especially around the holidays, like I can't have lunch. I can't see you. I can't do this because I'm working till 6 o'clock and I've got this and I've got that. The thing is, they talk about all that. But the truth of the matter is, when you're in overwhelm and when you're in that fight flight mode, right, with your nervous system, you're not actually being productive at all. You're being unproductive because you're working kind of against yourself. So that's the benefit of these types of things, is that they help you be more productive. They can even help with things that, and I say this because, especially for males, right? This is important. They want to hear this. It can help, your sexual activity and your prowess and all these things. Like, it just helps in life. And that's why people like Steve Jobs and a lot of other people who really had a reason to want to get to bigger places from not just a productivity standpoint, but hey, let's throw this bombshell out there: creativity, right? Because it's like, yeah, we can be productive. Like, we can make more widgets, or we can write more lines of text, or we can write more coding day after day. But what about creativity? I mean, what about curing cancer? What about people that are going to do huge things in the world? I mean, that's the kind of thing that, and that may mean that you're just a little bit better parent, or that you're just a little bit of a better storyteller, or a better pastor, or a better doctor, or whatever, right? It's not cutting anybody. It's just saying, wow, like these things that are really freaking amazingly simple can help you so much.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I always tell my clients, when I nudge to give them a certain breath exercise, meditation, whatever it is, affirmation writing, they're always surprised with how simple it is. I'm like, yeah, they're simple techniques. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it really does make a huge shift for yourself, and you notice right away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's amazing. And I think it's going to be kind of exciting to have some shows with some people that can talk a lot more about the ins and outs of that and the intricacies and technicalities. But I'll just share one example of Jerry Seinfeld. I think most people know Jerry Seinfeld. You either know Jerry Seinfeld from the show that was on for years and years and years, right? Seinfeld.
Mhm.
And if you don't know Seinfeld, you may know his current cable program, which is like coffee and cars and coffee with comedians or something like that. I don't know exactly the name of it, but it's like a podcast show on cable. And I guess it's not called cable anymore, is it? That's how old I am. I'm still talking about cable. So whatever it is, he has that show on. So, but I listened to him talk about meditation one time, and he said, that was the reason. And of course, Jerry Seinfeld is a mega millionaire beyond through his original show. And he talked about the fact that, it was really a struggle to do that show for so many years, and that he attributed the fact that he was able to do that show. And I mean, amazingly enough, it had great ratings for years and years and years. And it survived, he said, because of his commitment to and consistency with his practice of meditating. And we're not talking about hours, sitting on the side of a mountain in a robe. We're talking about maybe 10 or 15 minutes. You could sit on a toilet stool if you wanted to while you're doing it. But wherever it is or however you do it, he talked about the fact that was really one of the big factors that led to his ongoing success. And, anybody can be successful. Everybody gets 15 minutes of fame, right? But for him, he was talking about the amazing benefits of meditation and how that was just one of the overriding factors that allowed him to be as successful as he was. And he was readily admitted that although he was supposed to meditate twice a day, he only meditated once a day in the evening, because he couldn't figure out, why would you meditate when you wake up after you've already been asleep and supposedly relaxing for all those hours. But anyway, that's another story. So
I'm going to go ahead and interject. As I was getting ready this morning, I was observing myself and seeing how a little on edge, how on edge I was. And I was like, this is not typical of me in the morning to feel this way right now. And I said, what is different right now? Well, yes, you have a sick little man over there that was waking you up through the night. That's okay. That's fine. I love tending to my son, but what was the thing that I didn't do this morning? And as I'm getting ready and putting my makeup on and feeling agitated, I didn't meditate. I did not pause for a moment this morning to meditate, not even for a minute, because guess what, guys? It doesn't take even 10 minutes to get, it means sometimes I only have a couple of minutes to devote to some meditation, but I always make time for it. Well, not always. Today I didn't. Today was a different morning, and it had a great effect on me. And I was like, geez, this is like how I used to be in the morning, all the time, back in the days. This is how I used to feel. And this is so weird to feel this way right now. So doing the breath exercise with you, Tom, was like, oh, it just brought me back into what I'm used to, that peaceful state, feeling more calm. Things are slowing down, but I'm actually speeding up though, probably because I'm more clear.
Right. You're in the flow.
Yeah, in the flow. So I just wanted to, emphasize that meditation, it doesn't have to take long. Yes, sometimes I really enjoy a 30-minute meditation, even longer. It just depends on what the day is, but sometimes my day doesn't allot for that, and for a lot of us. So, do at least a minute. But yes, I believe I'm a strong person, and I'm a good sleeper typically. I like waking up and starting my day off with meditation before I even get out of the bed. And then I usually meditate throughout the day, little pockets of time, couple minutes, not long. But it really does make a huge difference and helps with the reset. And back in the days when I started meditating, it didn't come easy for me to slow the mind down, to bring the energy down, to learn to get into the flow of my breath. It was uncomfortable, but it showed me, wow, I really do need this. I really do need it. I want to practice this. And if I can't even slow down enough just to breathe into myself, and it's difficult, then that's calling me to really do this then. So those, because I have so many people who always that confide in me and that will say, it's really hard for me to meditate. I hate that it's so difficult for me. I'm like, just keep practicing. It will get easier. It really, really will get easier. And that is coming from somebody who it was not easy in the beginning. It was really challenging. Like, and I'm also not a fan of, you have to sit with your legs uncrossed. You can't lay down and all these things. There are no rules. Do what feels best for you. My legs are crossed typically. Sometimes I lay down, sometimes I'm sitting up, sometimes I fall asleep. Fantastic. That means I got into a really deep flow and I passed out. So just try it. Start practicing, and it will get easier and it will make a huge difference. And I notice with my meditations, I like doing them in the morning because it helps set the tone for the rest of the day.
Right. Well, I mean, look, there's a book by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning,
Mhm.
and I think some people are familiar with it. But if you look at the habits and routines of the most successful people on Earth, and there's been a number of people that have done this and just looked at that to try to parse out and siphon out what are the keys to that kind of success, right? Because uh, I mean, of course, there could be a lot of different factors, but there is no question that that morning routine, having a consistent, repetitive type of routine in the morning,
Yeah.
that's a favorable sort of, self-affirming type of routine it's beyond important. And that's been proven out many, many, many times. And so, if you've never heard of the Miracle Morning, I mean, we're not connected with the Miracle Morning, but you certainly ought to just take a look at that, because that's helped a lot of people to realize you have so much time in the morning that you don't even realize
Yes.
that is just frittered away, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if you watch the news or you watch a rerun of Knots Landing, most people probably don't know what Knots Landing is, or Dallas or something like that, right? Or whatever you do with the television, or even just drinking coffee, having a Danish, like
Social
there's
media.
social media, right? I mean, there's so many things that you can combine even with that, but change the trajectory of your day at the beginning of the day, right? Again, which is all about being more productive. So you're more in the present moment for what
Yeah.
it is you're doing. And you could
Yeah.
go home at night and be more in the present moment. Guess
Right.
what? For your family.
Yeah. I was somebody who was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have time to do blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Let's challenge this, Tavia. Let's really observe, how you're spending your morning." Because I'm all about morning routines. I really am. Today, I was not in my morning routine. Yesterday, I was. Yesterday was very lovely, wonderful morning and throughout the day. Um, yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say, Tom. I got so lost in my laughter that what was I saying?
That's okay. Well, you were talking about how you got off course
Yeah.
yesterday or
Uh-huh.
today, but you
Uh-huh.
were on course yesterday, and what a shift that was, right? I mean,
Right, but it's gonna come back to me what my point
okay.
was. You can carry on though.
Okay. Oh, well, good. Well, I appreciate that. Well, and I think that brings up something important too. I mean, life happens, and sometimes you can't, despite your best intentions, can't always maintain that, that particular thing, whatever that routine is.
I just remembered, be an observer of your morning routine. Be an observer. Just challenge it and just be like, what am I really filling my time with in the morning? Right? This is what shifted me into a really good morning routine. Well, there was a time where I was waking up and I wasn't meditating first thing in the morning and tuning into my rhythm, what's going on with me energetically. And I was just grabbing my phone and looking at social media and filling myself with all of that noise and all of that energy. And instead of judging myself and shaming myself, I just asked, is this really serving me? Is this really helpful for me to start the day off like this? And I just had to answer that question for myself. I'm not judging anybody else, but I just said, no, that could probably wait until a little bit later. What would be serving me? Like what would feel good? So I just started doing that and asking myself these questions and challenging myself. And I'm like, wow, I really do have time to meditate for a couple of minutes right now. And if I feel like also I didn't have enough time in the morning, then maybe can I go to bed a little bit earlier the night before so I can get the adequate sleep, wake up, meditate, then feel good to get out of bed and do the rest of the things. And then I started like, well, what would be nice to fill my body with first thing in the morning? Lemon water. And so then the morning routine just completely came into place. And I realized, wow, I really do have all this time to tend to myself and to set the tone for myself for the day. And it feels really good. Everything shifted for me. So those that are out there, I mean, I can give you even more details of what I've filled my morning with, my morning routine. It's very productive. I write, I read, I meditate, I mean, there's lemon water, first thing in the morning. There's other things. I mean, I could give you a couple more things that I do, but it feels really, really good. I'm just inviting people to just check it out. What am I doing in the morning? Am I just getting up? Oh gosh, keep hitting snooze, and then you rush out the door and feel frantic.
Well, that's really an interesting segue, though, to one thing that I think impacts so many people. That's not, I think. I mean, if I was the pharmaceutical companies, I would keep this bandwagon going day in and day out. But the problem is sleep, right? I mean, when you were talking about hitting the snooze button, I mean, one of the problems that I think so many people have is actually not getting really solid sleep. And I know men and women like to take this stance. Hey, I can operate on 3 hours of sleep, or I can operate on 4 hours of sleep. I can operate on 5 hours of sleep. I'll sleep when I die. Well, the problem is, we talked about Bronny Ware's 5 top things that people say they regret when they die. And, that sounds really macho, right? If you're a guy, and I guess, I don't know what it sounds like if you're a gal, but it just sounds a little stupid from the standpoint that we have to sleep. I mean, we just talked about the military coming up with this breathing technique in order to facilitate troops sleeping, because if you can't not sleep, it is impossible. So if that's true, and we know it is, I mean, we vowed to not get involved in a bunch of research and statistics on the show, but look it up. It is absolutely, and if you want to have paralysis by analysis, go look up all kinds of things on it. But it is true. You have to have quality sleep that includes deep sleep to restore REM sleep and all these things. So, and that's one of the things that, again, people take sleeping pills. I mean, they take Ambien, they take Xanax, they take all these crazy drugs, right? Maybe a shot of bourbon, maybe a shot of vodka, maybe 2 shots, maybe 3 shots, a couple beers, whatever it is that numbs people. But what it also does, unfortunately, is it really messes seriously with the quality of sleep that's going on. So you get up in the morning and you're hitting the snooze button 5 times, and you've snoozed through Dallas or Knots Landing or the news or whatever it is, or, all the pings from social media on your phone. Then you crawl into the shower, you crawl to the coffee maker, you crawl out the door, your hair looks like you put your finger in an electrical socket, right? And like mine. And it's like, so you have all these issues because you haven't slept. So now you're already behind the 8 ball. And you're already rolling into not thriving, because you can't thrive in that scenario. It's about surviving and going into overwhelm. And this is when your adrenals start to kick in and things start to go downhill. So you have to, before, and all I'm saying is that to get into that kind of morning routine, you really want to have the foundation of solid sleep. And I guarantee so many people are going to hear this and go, God, I mean, that is so true. Like I have the crappiest sleep. And they keep telling themselves it doesn't matter because, I'm going to overcome this. You can't overcome bad sleep. You just can't. I mean, they have Ray Donovan doing commercials for, Mattress Firm, talking about junk sleep, because junk sleep, it's funny, but it's true. It's not made up. I mean, it is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else can we do to sleep better? Tom?
Well, I mean, one of the
without
things,
taking all the things.
well, right. I mean, and that's the thing, is all those extraneous things, drugs and alcohol and all that, is killing you in terms of real sleep. So, I mean, first of all, most people have a large screen or maybe a smaller screen television in their bedroom, right? And they lay in bed and they go, I'm just going to watch an hour of football. I'm going to watch an hour of, the last bit of this movie I was watching on Netflix or whatever it is, or they're binging. So it makes them feel better before they go to sleep. And a lot of people fall asleep to the television, right? I mean, that's another thing, but that's, you sort of have to create an intention. I mean, a serious intention, just like we're talking about the morning. You have to start with having an intention to unjunk your sleep.
Yes.
We're not connected with Mattress Firm, but we have to seriously unjunk it.
Right. So these are some of the techniques. I mean, this is what I did. here, I'm going to go back to the news reporter days.
Great.
High stress job. Okay.
So you have
I'm
to.
going back. So
It's out of necessity.
yeah, high stress job. I had to wake up like 3 o'clock in the morning so that I could feel like, or 3:30, 3:45. So I would be ready and alert to go live on the air that morning, right? Super early. And so I didn't know what the day was going to bring me. I didn't know what chaos was going to be thrown my way. And so that in itself can create so much anxiety. And I experienced that. And so I found myself for the first time in my life not being able to sleep through the night and totally just laying in bed worried. And I'm like, what is happening to me right now? This is totally not like me. Okay, high stress job. I totally get it, connecting all the dots. I said, well, I can't function like this. I cannot be on, like, be at my best tomorrow live on the air for 3 hours straight with no sleep and being able to take these press releases and write something and then go live on the air. So I really had to clean it up. And this was when I was, drinking. I don't drink anymore, but I was like, okay, well, you can't drink before you go to bed anymore. You need to go to bed earlier. And uh, if you find yourself waking up, so these were just small adjustments that I made at the time. And if you find yourself waking up, let's practice breathing. And at the time, I didn't have all these, I didn't have all these breath techniques. And these breath techniques that we are sharing, that we're going to continue to share, Tom, are really simple. But I didn't look up anything. I just said, and also don't pick up the phone, Tavia. Don't start looking at social media. Don't start filling your mind with all of that. No phone. So I put the phone away. And I just practiced breathing. And I put my hand on my stomach and I said deep breaths each time, all the way into the belly and all the way out, release all of the breath. And sometimes I was able to fall back asleep and sometimes I wasn't, but I would get so incredibly relaxed and in such a like peaceful state of mind that I felt like I was sleeping. Like it was so incredibly relaxed. And then I would get up and go to work and I was like, that's okay. That breath work that I just did really actually helped me to the point where I felt really well rested right now. And so that was part of my routine. And I can't even tell you guys how many times I had to do the breath exercise at night during my news reporter days, years and years of doing that. And it really, really did make such a huge difference. And I also was like, okay, well, I can't have caffeine in the morning before the news report. So and then so it went, like the self-care, like it just continued on. I just got really aware of like what was working for me and what wasn't. And all of this really helped my mental state, everything, just my overall health and well-being. So um
Well, there's a
that
life
could
hack.
what's that?
It's a life hack.
Yeah.
Right? It's a living better hack.
Mhm.
And I hate the word hack in a way, but it's
Yeah,
just sort of like
I
what
get it
it's
though.
saying is it's like expediting something that's so ridiculously simple, but it works. And,
Mhm.
again, I mean, this was designed by the military. I mean, this isn't something that was created by somebody levitating off the side of a mountain. This was created by people that had a need, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. Just like you, when you were in that place where you're up at 3 a.m, you have to do something. You can't function. You cannot function without sleep. And as you know,
Yeah.
so you again, out of the need, out of the necessity, you had to create an intention and a pattern of things that you would do to facilitate getting to sleep so you could function well and be productive the next day,
Yeah.
not just barely scrape by, right? Like clawing through the day, like, oh my gosh, am I going to make it to noon? Am I going to make it
Yeah.
to 1 o'clock?
Is it
And
bedtime yet?
right. I mean, really, but so people, there is such a, I think, and this is, I mean, look, again, if I was the CEO of Pfizer or Merck or any of those companies, I mean, I would, of course, I mean, I would love people to pop a pill for every single thing. And if you watch TV at night, commercial television, you'll see there literally is a pill for everything. I've just
Yeah.
finished a book that talked about the author of the book had actually worked on Madison Avenue and talked about the fact that his bosses on Madison Avenue, advertisers had come in and said, look, this is many, many moons ago. We want to create the need for people to get remedies for things that actually don't exist, right? So, and I'll just use one example that's really funny, but seasonal affective disorder, SAD. I mean, years ago, we never heard about seasonal affective disorder. And I'm not saying there aren't issues when the sun isn't around much and, maybe your vitamin D levels are lower, but to actually create this entire commercial structure around the idea of seasonal affective disorder, that's not really like a medical condition. I mean, go look it up. It's not, but these things are created, right, it's because it is about commercialism in a lot of cases. So if you tell somebody, hey, you can go to sleep, if you have to get up early, you can go to sleep within 10 minutes, take this pill, there is a real allure, right? There's a great temptation to say, well, boy, that's simple. Or a couple shots of whiskey or a couple beers, whatever. But again, it's about the long-term impact. And man, that really, really, it just doesn't bode well, because if you have a family, do you want to end up in a situation where you lose your family because of something crazy? I mean, you are driving, you fall asleep while you're driving, or you have some terrible autoimmune disease or disease that really puts your family in an untenable situation. I mean, I know people don't want that, but people want to look for the quick fix. There's a philosopher from the 20th century named Anthony de Mello, and his main hypothesis was that people, and I really want to say this slow because this is true, people really don't want to be cured of their issues. They just want relief. And that's, our society. And when we talk about the matrix a little later on, but we are this matrix where, as a society, we've been sort of programmed to expect instant gratification.
Yeah.
Instant gratification is an entire science now, because I'm getting a lot of these master classes on this where, we're going back to the days, if you remember, and I know you will, because I'm going to be in a competition with your son in the not too distant future that he's very afraid of. Pac-Man and these kind of video games long ago that started off with this, like, a lot of noise. It's just like Las Vegas. If you've ever been to Vegas and you've been in a casino, there's constantly this crazy noise. And there's so much activity, and it's like when you're actually gambling, there's so many things that are hitting your dopamine center, right? To give you this little upstart, like this little jacking up. It doesn't have to be booze or anything else. There's enough going on with sounds and all these weird things that they incorporate into the casino. And the same thing's happening today with social media and with lots of apps and things, where you get this instant gratification through noises, through, yay, you got this or you got that. And it's like, wow. We are living in that cycle, this repetitive cycle of just getting constant dopamine hits. And, it feels okay at the time, and it can last for a while, and you can keep doing that for a certain number of years. But man, that really starts to play havoc on your system. Again, we're talking about adrenal fatigue and just all these different things. So it's just something to be really cognizant of. So I think an intention for sleep is exactly where you have to start, right? Every night, just think about it, actually, which is what you did.
Yeah. What do you say to the people that are super resistant to making any change and continuing on in this way?
But that right there goes to the very guts of and the root of the matrix.
Yeah.
Because we have free will, and people, I don't know about your clients. I work with a lot of people that are in their 50s, 60s, and they are at a place where they're like, look, dude, I have been living for 4, 5, 6 decades. And they tell me that they've been living in survival mode, and they've been living
Yeah.
And they say it's like I'm on this hamster wheel. I spin around day after day after day. And I look back and I'm either nowhere or really not very far from where I started. So it's like on Monday, I start off at my mailbox and I'm running at 100 miles an hour. I go to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I get to Friday night or Saturday and I'm like, I'm still at my mailbox. I was on a treadmill and I never got anywhere. I'm still at my house. I never got 3 beyond my own mailbox. And they really sort of have this awareness of repetition and sameness, like they're just repeating their life over and over and over, absolutely like a robot.
Yeah.
So, sure, a lot of people will say, you guys are, you should keep wearing your Birkenstocks and tie dyeing your shirts and smoking your wacky weed. But I ain't doing that. I'm going to watch football before I go to bed. I'm going to have a 6-pack of beer and I'm going to wake up a little hungover, but I'll get through it because, I'm tough and I'm awesome. And that's fine. I mean, that's okay. Unfortunately, usually, and this is again going back to Anthony DeMello's statement, people don't want the cure. It usually takes a crisis, some
Right.
horrific thing in their life, a
Yeah.
divorce, a
Yeah.
terrible illness, a near-death experience, a car crash, losing a loved one, or
Right.
some horrible thing, to all of a sudden have all of these bricks falling on top of their head.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that my wake-up call was, I looked in the mirror and I got tired of looking in the mirror and not being happy with what I was seeing back, and not like my physical appearance, but like genuinely looking in the mirror and just I'm seeing that I'm not happy, like the inside. There was no denying it. I was like, you can keep on with this lifestyle and, stay in this flow that you're in right now and continue on, but it's very apparent that you're not happy. And I just got really sad and really just, is this really how you want to live your life? Is this really serving you? Are you really serving anybody else? And I said, no, I'm not. So I made the change. Big one. And so much then continued to change, and it's been amazing. But I do see it all the time with my clients. I just recently, one of my clients, it came in very clearly that she was having difficult time sleeping, very difficult time sleeping. I mentioned this to her. I said, "You're having a difficult time sleeping." She said, "Yes, I am. Very, very difficult." I lay in bed, I'm like, "Worried, correct?" She's like, "Yes, very worried." And I gave her some breath techniques, some other practices to try out. I followed up with her a week later, didn't hear anything back. Followed up with her again a week later. So now it's been 2 weeks since our session. She said that she hadn't practiced anything yet. And I said, "That's okay. How are you feeling?" Stressed out beyond belief. She's like, "I know you gave me so much. I was so excited about our session. I know you gave me so much to do, and I was so looking forward to it. And I'm scared. I'm really scared to take any action right now." And I said, "I just commend you for being honest. Just being honest that you are scared. Um, you know that you're not happy with this routine, that it's not serving you, but you're also scared of what's on the other side of changing all of this, because it would be a big change." Yeah,
Huge.
it's not just changing this one thing. It's gonna be a ripple effect of a lot of changes for you. Yeah, it's
But
big.
that's it, right? It's the
Yeah,
fear. So,
right.
I mean, for my clients, that's one of the main things that when I talk to people and they've got to this certain point in life, and again, it's usually at an advanced age, and what they're gripped by is fear.
Yeah.
But what fear actually is, it's that fundamental egoic attempt to keep us, all of us, resistant to change. So, we talked about the nervous system, which is the fight, flight, freeze, which is very important to our existence and continuation as a species. However, ego, on the other hand, is, man, that thing is diabolical, right? Because the ego is there to, and it's always with us. It's sort of like a bad ex, where you have a child with a bad ex, and it's like no matter what, they're always there. You can't, yeah, they're always there. So,
It's
but
part of
the
the human
ego,
experience.
it is. And our ego is the same way. And so many times, and it's amazing how many times this happens. And this goes back to people don't want the cure. But when you talk to people about things that make sense, that are actually efficacious, that work, they go back home and and you're talking about things that literally don't cost anything, right? I mean, we're not talking about pills. We're not talking about, I mean, if people stop to look at, I mean, look at smoking. If people that smoke, if people smoke, they don't smoke like a cigarette a day. I mean, they smoke a pack a day, 2 packs a day. So I looked up the price of cigarettes recently just to see, and a carton of cigarettes, and I've never bought, I think it's somewhere between $50 and $65 here in Illinois. I don't know where it is other places. It's probably $100 in Santa Cruz. But so it's like, when you think about what you spend on these things that are actually destroying you, and they are, it's like, but now when you're given a tool or something that is either no cost or low cost, even if you're talking about time necessary to use it, people stop and think, wow, as you said, Tavia, like, what's my life going to look like if I am sleeping?
Yeah.
Right? What is my life going to look like if I'm not in bed at 1:30 every morning, thinking about, stressing about, worrying about what's happening tomorrow, what's happening Wednesday, what's happening Friday, what's going to happen in 2023, what's going to happen in 2038. I mean, you realize the insanity. I mean, what is the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. So it's funny when we work with people to give them a different result, a meaningful different result that actually really shifts the trajectory of their life in a very positive way.
Yes.
Not going to happen because, and people I work with, I always ask them to name their ego. And I'll share that my ego's name is Biff. So when I start getting off the rails and I start getting crazy, I know Biff's right there. Biff is like, he's on the throttle and he's jacking it up, right? But just that little thing about naming your ego can make such a difference in recognizing, is this you that is really wanting to stay on that hamster wheel? Is this you that wants to stay in front of your mailbox on Monday, and on Friday, after all that work, still be in front of the mailbox? Or is that Biff or Molly or Shelby or Flick or Zula or whatever the name is? Is that what you want? I mean, do you realize, Tavia? I mean, this is part of the whole process about this show, is people have really lost the fundamental ability to make their own choice.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're talking about?
Totally.
Underneath all of this, it's choice.
Right.
And I've got clients that will say, I like to drink a beer every night, and by God, I don't expect to be judged over it. So my response is, you know what? Who cares? Who cares? Honestly, I don't care if you have 6 beers a night. Like, nobody's judging anybody. But fundamentally, can you answer this question truthfully, meaningfully, and say that I'm drinking 6 beers a night or 1 beer or smoking these cigarettes because that's my actual choice, because I really love it? Or is that what I saw 40 years ago from mom, from dad, from Uncle Bill, from Uncle Joe, that we had to stay away from at Thanksgiving because we don't know why, but they said don't go near him unless you have an adult by you. And so whatever it is, right, you have all these things. Is it your choice? This matrix concept, it's about choice.
Right.
And we get lulled and hypnotized every single minute, hour, day, week, month, and year, over and over, to keep us in this matrix, so that the things we're doing are not our choice. And if I was big tobacco, I mean, look, this country was built on alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I'm not knocking anybody. I'm not, no issue. But what I am saying is the country was also built on choice and freedom.
Mhm.
So if we're really getting to the fundamentals, right? If we really want to get to the nitty gritty, going into the weeds of these things, are we really making that choice? So,
Yes.
and invariably the client's like, I don't, after going through working on these things, like, I don't want to drink anymore. Not because I have a problem with beer or whatever. I just don't like, it's not, it wasn't my choice.
Right. I remember, being a very little girl, like, probably, like, as young as I'm cringing because this is really gnarly. 6 or 7 years old, I was watching a movie that I probably shouldn't have been watching, but my mom let me. It was really gnarly, it was really intense. This woman's daughter was killing, other people, and the little girl was, like, young, and it was really dark, and was meant to come off, like, very realistic, like this would happen in everyday life. It was really gnarly. Um, the mom was dealing with the stress by drinking and smoking, and I remember looking at her in bed drinking and saying to myself, "That's how you deal with stress, Tavia. That's how you deal with stress." I programmed myself, and then I found evidence of that all around me. I think I was already seeing evidence of that all around me, and then I started seeing, people that were very close to me dealing with stress by drinking, and so I started making that association that that's how, I deal with stress. And it's like I knew that that's not like a healthy thing. Like I could, but I didn't see any other really positive examples of how people were dealing with stress. It didn't seem to override all the drinking that I was seeing of like how people were dealing with stress and so forth. So that's how what I gravitated towards. And when I finally was like looking in that mirror and really having a heart to heart with myself, and I'm like, "You're not happy. You're clearly not happy." And I reflected back and I really connected all the dots. I'm like, "You were shown this at a very young age, to how to deal with stress. And then, even if people weren't drinking, they were really stressed out. They were getting angry. That's another way that they were dealing with stress. I mean, you just saw all these destructive ways of dealing with stress. And I didn't judge. I wasn't judging anybody. I was like, wow, I was just observing. I was just observing it all. And I was like, there's got to be another way. And I know that there is. And so I just started asking myself, like, how would I want to tend to myself? How would I want to treat myself in, stressful situations and navigate them? How do I want to go through life? How do I want to live my life? And I just started asking myself, and I just practice quieting all the noise around me and said, it doesn't matter what so and so's doing, or this person, or that person, or what the TV says. Like, what does Tavia want? How would I feel better? My own unique self. And I think that that's what we forget to do a lot of the time. Again, what you're talking about, the choice, Tom, like what resonates with your unique self? What makes sense to you? Not everybody else. Because what works for somebody else isn't necessarily going to work for you.
Well, I mean, there's two issues here, and I want to do one thing because this blows things up, right? When you start talking about things like drinking and tobacco and firearms, people get crazy one way or another. It's like abortion, right? So because you can't just talk about it, so you got to get crazy on one side or the other. So I want to say this about all that. I absolutely love scotch, bourbon, good vodka, not swill, not stuff that's made in a toilet, because I've seen some of that. I will not drink that. But there's no judgment here about alcohol, right? I mean, I I don't drink very much, but I don't have any issue with drinking, and I don't care if people drink. I mean, great. I mean, there's no problem with that. My goodness. I'm 1 hour from Kentucky. I drive through that state. That state is built. I mean, I went to the airport in Louisville, and when I got into the terminal, I mean, there's huge, like a huge. I've never seen this before in an airport terminal. There's a huge like statue of bourbon, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. I mean, nobody's knocking that. Nobody's knocking tobacco. I actually have a custom built humidor for cigars. I mean, I love cigars. I don't smoke anymore, but I love
like
cigars
too.
Oh boy.
Love them.
Now who's the goon?
Love the smell.
We're not
everything.
right. We're not like cigars for me are a passion, right? I mean, I and I could, as much as I wanted to be monogamous to certain types of cigars or certain brands, I would just keep going and trying new ones. I just wondered, when I've had some of the most amazing cigars, why do I keep trying new ones? But I did, because I love cigars. They're great. I mean, I have no issue with tobacco, and I certainly have said before that firearms. I mean, I have enough firearms for arm a small third world country. So there's no issues or judgment on any of these things. But again, it goes back to the issue of why. And you talked about something that underlines all of this, which is, what do you want, right? You said, because like what you were saying, what does Tavia want? But there's a real problem with that I've really seen is people in a lot of situations have grown up in circumstances. I'm not going to get into this trauma issue about whatever. I mean, it's not about that, because that's long past and done. Whatever people grew up with, they grew up with. But what happens is that there's sort of this thing that happens when people grow up in a family, and especially true if there is alcoholism or addictions or things like this, where they tend to, and some of this depends on where they were, maybe in, if they're siblings, but they can become parentified, right? Or they grew up sort of caretaking. Maybe they had to be the caretaker for mom or for dad or for the siblings, or they sort of had to become the adult early on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all different variations about how that looks. But the thing that I've noticed about people, and again, it just seems to be, the upper 40s, 50s, and 60s, that people, if you ask them, like if I'm working with a guy named Bob, how would you identify yourself? How do you identify yourself? Well, I'm a good golfer. I like to go to the Methodist church on Sunday, and I tithe, and I don't know, I'm a good hunter, whatever, right? But that's not I mean, like, if they die tomorrow and they went to the pearly gates, like, who are you, right? What are you about? I mean, nobody cares if you're a good golfer, unless you're Tiger Woods, and nobody cares if you go to church on Sunday, right? But what are you as a human being? And what I see is so many people don't have the foggiest idea who they are. They have been on this, again, a hamster wheel, a treadmill that they've been surviving for so many years, so many decades, because they just have. That if you ask them, what do you want? Like, what are 5 things? And I won't put you on the spot because all of us have trouble with this. But if someone said, what are 5 things you want? Forget about, of course you want Taylor to have the best life possible, and you want, world peace. But what do you, as an actual human being, a unique person, want? You ask people that, and they're like, what? You could ask me anything. Ask me a physics question, and I'll be, ask me a calculus question, and I'll have a better shot at giving you an answer.
Well, I want to live my life to the fullest, live it with joy, fulfill my purpose and service. And I want to see other people do the same.
Right.
And I don't think that we can live our lives to the fullest and live our lives with joy if we don't embrace the shadow. The shadow meaning all of the challenges, all of the unpleasant things in life, and really allowing ourselves to be with it and squeeze out all that we can from those experiences. I think that that's where we are able to then take that and live our lives fully and feel, just embrace the beauty of life because of the challenges that we've gone through. So, I mean, you can't have one without the other. That's been my experience. And that's what I've seen in this lifetime. You can argue that, but that's where I'm at. And that's what I want for myself. And that's what I want for others.
Right. But I think that when people embark, right, and I mean embark, so in other words, that first step, the first 5 steps, the first 10 steps, like you're talking about the lady that you were giving advice to who is still, I'm in stress, I'm in overwhelm, right? And she is. But it's that idea of overcoming the fear of, because it is hard. I mean, nothing good is
Yeah.
easy. I mean, you
Yep.
can't you can't learn to run a marathon until you start off running half a mile, you go to a mile, you go to 3 miles. I mean,
Yeah.
you just don't say,
Yeah.
hey, unless you have a body like mine, because it's capable of doing anything. So if I say I want to run a marathon tonight, I can run a marathon, no problem. But for most people, you have to build up to it, right? And
Yeah.
there's pain in that. I mean, it hurts, your legs
Totally.
hurt,
Yeah.
muscles you've never used
Yeah.
before. And that's scary, right? That's
I
the
love
fear.
it.
And that's where our ego,
Yeah.
well, it's true.
Yeah.
And that's where our ego will lock in and pull
Mhm.
us back, right? And they
Yep.
put that chain around our neck, and it's like a leash. It's an invisible leash from our ego saying, you know, I don't think you want to, I don't think you want to take that risk. Inertia,
Yeah.
status quo is the name of the game, right? And really, if you look at society and you think about like early on in the early 1900s when we were becoming industrialized and you have factories popping up all over and you needed people to be in labor. I mean, there has to be a thought that, you don't really want people thinking too much beyond the immediate moment of them, you know, packing cigarettes or, building cars or, doing whatever they're doing on a production line. I mean, there was a need for that at a certain point, but we're so far beyond that. And, but we're slow to develop and realize that we're not living that life anymore. We just aren't. And, people seem to get really more recalcitrant, more reluctant to do things that will help them. And these are easy things. We're not
Yeah.
talking about running a marathon, but it, as you said, aptly, it will be a challenge, and it's not going to be easy. And some things that you will see in the mirror might scare you, right? I mean, unless you look like Brad Pitt, like I do. But for most people, they might look at themselves and go, well, that's scary, and I don't want to see that. And most people cannot look at themselves in the mirror. They don't like to
Yeah.
look at themselves in the mirror, truth be told.
I tell my clients, like this one person in particular, as I've said to so many people, client or not, yeah, it's going to get uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. I know it very well. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. Just accept it. Just accept it and see where it takes you. Why not? Why not? Because the other option, and we hear this all the time, is staying where we are and keep feeding into the lifestyle that we are living right now and what we've created for ourselves. Because guess what, you guys, we've created this. You created everything around you right now that you are in, that you are seeing, that you are experiencing, that you are feeling. You're creating it. And you also have the power to create something else for yourself. And the change is uncomfortable. And it's okay. It's okay that it's uncomfortable. I can't even tell you how many times I've had this conversation with my 8-year-old son. And this conversation didn't just start when he was 8. We've been having this conversation for as long as I can remember. Since you keep bringing up running, Tom, Taylor ran his first race when he was 4 years old with me, 3 miles. I knew he was ready. We trained for it. We really trained for it. It was amazing. And while we were training for it and trying to push to go a little bit, longer without stopping, Taylor would look at me like, "Oh, mom, it's uncomfortable. Like it's getting uncomfortable now, and I'm sweating, mom." Mom, I'm sweating. He's like saying all these things, thinking I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, let's quit. Let's stop right here. We're good. We're done. No. My response was, great, good. It's going to get uncomfortable. He looks at me like, what? I'm like, yep, it's going to get uncomfortable. But when you continue to move through the uncomfortableness, it starts to feel pleasant again. And that sweat means that you're working hard. It means that you're on the right track, actually. And he
Exactly.
was like, I still have the image of his face in my mind the first time he said it. And we're running along the beautiful coastline of Santa Cruz. And he was like, and I'm like, so let's keep going. You got this. And he's like, okay. Now he's just, I mean, he's always been an amazing runner. And now we're running 6 miles together, doing 6-mile races. He's 8 years old. I mean, he's incredible athlete, great runner. That's his sport now. That's what he loves. And I've exposed him to a whole bunch of different sports, but that's the one that he loves. And, and we still talk about it, like but it's less of that, communication about but I also use it as an example for other areas of his life. Like, oh, this is getting uncomfortable, mom. Like this, I don't, and it's like, okay, well, let's take a look at it. I'm like, yep, it is uncomfortable, and we can still move through this. So little kids were telling this to, adults. It's just a part of life, you guys. It's a part of life, and it's okay. That's what I tell myself too. I have to tell myself, because I'm like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. And it's okay. I know what's on the other side of this. It's got to be better than what I'm in right now. And at least I'm going to try.
Well, I don't want to use too much trash talk on here, but his bowling still leaves something to be desired. So he may be a great runner, but we'll have to see. That remains to be seen about his bowling
His top
prowess.
score is for lack of a better, it's better than yours. I can't find another word right now.
It was, but I mean, we're going to find out soon enough how that really looks. So I hope that he's, preparing, and it's going to be a tough match.
The last time we played, I think he got like right under 100, 95, 98. Your top was 85.
83. But thanks for the additional.
Thank you for your honesty.
I appreciate that.
So,
but well, we'll see.
I'll take a video of your guys' game, and we will share it here on social media.
But really, what you're talking about right now is nothing more and nothing less than breaking a cycle. Because when you were his age, you were thinking about how drinking could assuage issues, right? And that was something that you were sort of imprinting as a go-to.
Yeah.
Now, and this is what I really try to emphasize to people, is that it really is about breaking the cycle. And invariably, when I'm working with people 50, 60 years old, if they have their parents still alive, they're in their 90s or late 80s or whatever. And those folks are not, I mean, they're not going to break any cycles, right? I mean, they've lived a cycle, and that's what it is. So I try to explain to them, look, I mean, you have a 90-year-old mom, you're 65. So that's a 30-year difference in terms of actually breaking a cycle of repetition, of crazy, right? Where you just live in this cycle until you die. And just miserable. And going back to Bronnie Ware's The 5 Top Regrets. I mean, why do that? So, but then I say, look, if you're 65, you have a 30-year jump on breaking the cycle. What if you could help your daughter, your son, also break the cycle, right? Because it's about paying it forward, and that the way what you're talking about with Taylor, that's exactly what's happening. You're breaking a cycle, because Taylor is realizing how to function in life, highly function, not survive, right? You're teaching him to thrive, and to be, if he wants to be more productive, if he wants to build the next Mac computer, if he wants to be the next whatever, composer, cure cancer, he can. But again, what this is going back to is him having the ability and the skills to make his actual own choice, not what you've just beaten into him or shown him by example, drinking, smoking, whatever, beating people up in bars, whatever it might be. You're setting the example for him to make his own conscious choice. And that's what we're talking about, right? Is people having a conscious choice to make. That's it.
Yes.
But that is hard. It's not easy. And if you can learn it at 8, it's a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
if anybody thinks that being an adult and learning skills is easy, I mean, we know it's not, right? Like if you learn to play the piano when you're 6, 8, 10, it's going to be a lot easier than when you're 40 or 50. And I can say this out of experience from an example of a motorcycle because I never rode a motorcycle. And I signed up for one of those weekend classes at the university. And I got on a motorcycle, and within probably the first 6 hours of the class, I rode right into a tree. And I realized that, hey, I'm not really a motorcycle rider. Now I can ride a bike, I could drive really, because I did that when I was young. And it's really so much harder. Not that I couldn't ride a motorcycle, but I would be a danger to others and other animals and things. I don't want to do that. So, but I realized, hey, I mean, let's be real. If you could learn these skills now at 8, he's going to take him to when he's a teenager. That's a really tough time to get through. And if he takes it into adulthood, I mean, his life is literally going to be, for lack of a better term, limitless.
But let's not discourage our older listeners.
No, of course not.
From
No. And believe me, what we're talking about is a lot easier than riding a motorcycle.
And
yeah,
practicing and
Right.
learning these new skills.
Right. You're not going to drive into a tree or anything like that, or ride into a tree or hurt a motorcycle doing what we're talking about. But you may, and
it's easier. Yeah, it is easier at a younger age. I mean, most likely, yes. And don't give up on yourselves. And if you're not 8 years old and you want to try something new, please do. Go through the uncomfortableness, because
people do that all the time.
Regardless, it's uncomfortable. The change is uncomfortable. Yeah.
And people do it all.
It's uncomfortable.
They learn instruments. They learn, to golf or to do sports or all kinds of things when people are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'm just saying what you're doing in terms of breaking the cycle and giving this young 8-year-old a chance to not have to have someone in it, that he knows outside that maybe has died by suicide or has serious mental health issues that they just can't break through. Because if people are learning these skills early, man, it's so much better, right, than having to go back and figure all this out, because it does take work.
Yeah.
It's important work, though. And if you're in your 50s and 60s, you have kids, you have grandkids, how about thinking about their futures and about their ability to be able to make their own choice? So, I mean, it's kind of important if you think about it.
Tom, I would really love for us to address this right now. There has been so many posts that I've seen recently on Facebook in particular, with people saying that they don't want to go on. They're really depressed and they don't know what more they can do. And I know we're reaching the end of our episode for today, but I would really like to utilize the rest of the time for this in particular, because I've been seeing it a lot more as of recently.
I agree.
Yeah. And so I always reach out to these people privately, message them on Facebook Messenger, and offer to be of support to them. Sometimes I hear back, sometimes I don't. I know that the people that are reaching out, that are posting these things, are in need of help. Otherwise, they wouldn't be saying what they're saying.
Absolutely.
And the people that might know them a little bit closer might be like, oh, there this person goes again. Because I've seen that in the comments too. Oh, why do you always do this? Why are, I just saw you the other day. Why do you always end up back in this situation and doing this to yourself? Like, oh gosh. And it's like, I can just hear and I know the person cares that's commenting, but I also know that, the person that's probably receiving it is also probably feeling some shame by that comment as well.
Absolutely.
So, I have a lot to say about this. I mean, I always just reach out and say, I'm here. I'm here to support. If you need support, I am here. I can give you resources. I'm here to hold space for you. Thank you for saying something. Thank you for expressing that you are feeling this amount of pain inside, because you don't need to keep this inside. It is important to let it out. That way you can create an opportunity for change, for something better, and to open yourself up to a new way of getting help, right? And getting support that you need so that you can start changing what you've been accustomed to, what has led you to this point in your life. Again, we're talking about the change and being at choice. We don't have to stay in this cycle that we're in. We really can't make the effort. There is so much support that is available to us. There are so many wonderful people and organizations out there, you guys, that actually love holding space for people and have the intention of, I'm holding space for you because I believe in you and I know that you can get through this to the other side and come through good. And we just got to find, what you're passionate about, what's going on, what's the root of this issue that's troubling you right now. And also let's highlight the things that bring you joy and bring that back into your life again. And if you don't know what that is, we're going to have a great time discovering what that is. There's a lot of organizations out there that are completely catered to doing that. And Tom, anything that you want to chime in about?
Well, I think that the entire
Because I can keep going on and on.
Well, but I think the entire concept that we had setting this up was to change the discourse in the world, not our country, not the UK, everywhere, because this is something that affects everyone all the time. But to change this idea about mental health and or mental illness, however you want to characterize it. I like to talk about it as mental health issues, and to change the trajectory of what is so common and has been so common since the beginning of time, which is what are the things that go back to the shame you referenced that make people either not talk about or seek help or talk to even people in their own families and circles is stigma. If you're a man, there's an automatic stigma. If you're a woman and you're a mom, there's an automatic stigma. If you're a young person, there's a stigma. We're going to be doing a lot of things over the coming months about parents with children that have been who have died by suicide, but have tried to give signals about this, right? But there is such a feeling and a overall far overreaching sense that we don't talk about this, right? Because not only are we talking about stigma, but we're talking about taboo. And so how many times did you hear growing up, there's a time and a place to talk about that. This is not the right time. We don't talk about those things.
Yeah.
That's a family secret.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Now, here's the thing. So if you went out today, or I went out, use myself. I went out today, and there's an ice skating rink right out here in the center by this huge clock tower, which you hear occasionally dinging. So if I went out on the skating rink, and I can't skate, I can't ice skate or roller skate. So I tried it. I broke my arm. I have a bone sticking out of my arm. Now, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to get that addressed, and I'm going to have a cast. People are going to sign it. They're going to maybe bring a flower, maybe send a card, get well, whatever, right? But if someone has something similar mentally, that we look at in a totally different way. Like, we don't talk about it. Let's put a sheet over it. Let's sweep it under the rug. We're not going to go there. And we know that's true of parents that we're going to be talking to that have actually had situations of losing a child, even though signs were demonstrated overtly, right? But it's just this sort of underlying unease with saying, there are issues in this country, and it doesn't mean that you're not a man. There was a movie that I saw recently at AMC theaters. It was in every theater in the country, and I can't remember the title of it. I talked to you about it. There was not one person in the theater, but it was with a pro baseball player. It was a newscaster woman, and it was also following some teenagers over time. One of the teenagers, through the filming of this movie, died by suicide. And it was about the fact that I'm a baseball player. I can't have any problems. Are you kidding me? I mean, if I say I have an issue, no matter how small or how big, this can't have that, right? And we know that. Like, it's just true. But this movie was made to start chipping away at that. That's what we're here about. It's like we can't live in that world anymore. Like you breaking the cycle with your son, we have to just break the cycle. I mean, really, like, slavery, we had to break the cycle. Suffrage, we had to break the cycle. I mean, they're just things that we have to break the cycle because it's just stupid, right? I mean, I know there's people that just want to live in, I want to go back to 1868. We'll go back there then. But we're not in 1868. We're not in 1878. We're not in 1901. We're here. And mental health issues need to be talked about. We talk about health issues, about avoiding upper respiratory illness, right? We talk about avoiding COVID. So we talk about all these things, but you don't hear that about issues that are involving mental health. You really don't. It's all, I mean, look, we have one suicide attempt in this country. I'm not talking about other countries, but in this country, every 27 and a half seconds. One attempt every 20, just call it 28 seconds, 28 seconds. I mean, so figure how many people have just attempted suicide while we've been on this podcast, right? I mean, that's untenable for me and for you and for a lot of other people. There's a lot of people that we're going to be talking to and we'll be listening that have children that are on the precipice of that.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about, is saying it's okay. I mean, it's okay. Mental health, physical health, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they look different, right? I mean, whether you have white skin, black skin, whatever, it's like it's skin. We have to stop glossing over these things and just keep going back to can't talk about it. It's a secret. And that's how a lot of people grew up, and that's part of the repetition. It's part of the matrix. It's how we work. And so, if you're stressed, if you're anxious or you're depressed, you go to Prozac, you go to Xanax, look up the facts, look up the research on this. These things don't work. They're just simply Band-Aids. But the problem with Band-Aids is if you don't actually get to the root or source of what the issue is, what might have started off as a slight infection then becomes gangrene. And do you really want to lose an arm over just not going to the doctor and actually finding out what the root is? Just sticking a Band-Aid over it does not work, right? Taking a Xanax, taking a Valium, taking drinking a bottle of wine at night, it's not the answer to these things. It really isn't.
Right.
Sorry.
I will say that a couple of the people that, well, there's been quite a few at this point, that I've reached out to, and I know there's been a couple of them that have said to me like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't say these things on here. Like, I apologize. I probably shouldn't have shared so much." I'm like, I'm glad that you did. It shows how much you are in need of connection and that you are in need of support right now. And there is so much support available that I can easily pass along to you at this moment in time with your permission. And I think a lot of us, maybe some of us get surprised that, oh, wow, people do care. People aren't just scrolling through and are just like, whatever, this person's crying wolf. This person isn't really going to do anything. I know better. I know better. I know the signs of people that are genuinely thinking about it, having suicidal thoughts, that are actually have attempted suicide, and I don't take it lightly. So I'm always going to speak up and I'm always going to share my support. And to those that are listening right now, if you are in need of support, please just reach out to me directly on Facebook Messenger, and I am happy to provide you with support and hold space for you. So you are absolutely not alone, and there's so many options out there to help you to get in and through what you are going through right now.
Well, and we talked about at the very first show on Thanksgiving, the fact that the country now has, instead of a 911 three-digit number, we have 988, which is for mental health services. Now, there should be a banner that's been going across on YouTube. I haven't looked at YouTube, so I don't know that it has. I can't confirm that. But I mean, just, that's how significant this is, that there is a three-digit number that people can call and reach out that will work them in their particular where they live, and provide help because it's there, because it's
Yeah.
necessary. I mean, we don't live back in the 1800s, the 1900s. I mean, we're living in a time that is extremely stressful, and people can and need to reach out, and we need to be benevolent in terms of giving support for those people. For sure, you're right, 100%.
I know we
So,
are reaching the end of our program for today. Tom, any last words to our listeners
well,
before we
gosh,
close?
we didn't really have a chance to talk about the two things I was hoping to about couples relationships, right, and some of the ways they perceive them and some of the differences, and that
Yeah,
we'll have to save that for a different time. But
right.
we did have a chance to talk a little bit about the matrix and about how
Yeah,
we're living and working in this repetition. It's really not much different than being in an ant farm and just going on and on and on, doing the same things over and over, expecting to get from our mailbox to the next mailbox, but then at the end of every week, realizing we really didn't make it.
yeah,
And there's just a lot of ways that we can start making small, it's not about huge changes. It's not about riding a motorcycle or flying a jumbo jet. It's about small changes that don't cost anything, that can really help shift people's needle from being overwhelmed and just feeling like life is just too much all the time, to being able to be in a different place a little bit where it just slowly starts to look different. It's not about making huge steps. And sometimes you're going to go backwards. You're going to fall back into the rabbit hole, and that's okay. We all do.
right.
You started out this morning stressed out from all the things going on, and just feeling that. But a few breathing techniques that we can thank the Navy SEALs and the military armed forces for
I feel like
really makes a
myself.
difference. Yeah.
Feel
I
like
mean,
myself. Yeah. I'm going to be going home a lot more pleasant. That's for sure.
well,
Yeah.
I'm sure your
Yeah.
son will appreciate that.
Yes,
And,
you will. Yeah.
so anyway, yeah, no, I think it's great. And, I know one thing I wanted to mention, that on Christmas Day, cause we'll be broadcasting Christmas Day, that we were, however we actually work that we want to extend the time a little bit on Christmas Day, because man, that's a tough day for people, right? I mean, if you're
Mhm.
alone, if you're in the hospital, if you're at a VA, or you're just, I mean, we don't talk about this, another taboo issue, but the foster system. There's so many kids out there that don't maybe even have a home. They're staying at places that where there's not like a loving caregiver. But so we want to extend some things to people that really are in a different place than if you're. And I hope that most people are with their families and they're enjoying the holiday and having a great time. But there's a lot of people that aren't, and so. I reached out to some people recently, but I'd like to also ask if anybody knows anyone that has experience in these types of things. I mean, it doesn't matter who they are, but we'd like to maybe do a 3 to 5 minute interview with them, and get some thoughts that they have about that, and just let people know that people understand how they're feeling. I know from, as we talked about with serious illness, and you're in a hospital as an example. You do not get a lot of empathetic care from caregivers in the hospital for the most part. I'm not saying, I mean, you get amazing care, but there's a difference, right, between sort of sterile, technical care and really feeling that, knowing somebody does care, especially if you're alone and your family, you may not have family, or they're distant, far away, whatever. So we just want to acknowledge that and dedicate that, I think, to those folks and people who are grieving the loss of, we just had a dedication a few days ago for your brother,
Yeah.
and people grieving loss that should never have happened. And that's what
Mhm.
we want to be there for. So if anybody is interested in sharing some things, or sharing some people that have expertise in that area, we would sure love to talk to them.
Great. So go ahead and reach out to me on Facebook Messenger. I will also put my email address in the thread of this video on Facebook. And we will be back next Sunday with a guest, Ann Moss, who is going to be sharing her experience of her son taking his life. So she will be live with us next week. Those that are tuning in, please feel free to ask questions, leave comments, whatever you feel compelled to do. But she will be here and offering her time, and she is spreading awareness about uh, suicide prevention. And we are delighted to have her on as a guest next week. And that will be from 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then Central Time is what, Tom?
11 to 1.
Okay. And then again, I'll put my email address in the thread, and take good care, everyone.
Take care. Hope your son does well.
Thank you, Tom.